The holidays were fun, but left only the void.
And the waiting.
And the falling.
And falling.
And the waiting again.
And falling.
And even more falling.
And even more falling. As the void threatens
to encompass.
Until.
Or it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Take me out to Twitchy Dolphin Media presents Let's Get Two. It's baseball from sea to shining sea by the team that brings you home. And now, your host, James Christopher.
Beat the drum and hold the phone. The sun came out today. We're born again, and there's new grass on the field. We couldn't have said it better ourselves, John Fogerty. Baseball is, in fact, back. And that means welcome to the Season 5 premiere of Let's Get Two. We're back with a brand new, fresh look for the 23 season. I'm your host, James Christopher, and I can't be more excited to be back doing this show and have those of you who have followed us from episode 1 to the season 4 finale back for another journey. And for those of you who are new, you might be asking yourselves, what is this? You might be wondering, what is this Let's Get Two thing? You might also be thinking to yourselves, oh, great, here's another baseball podcast. And that's, well, fair. Let's Get Two strives to be much more than just your average baseball podcast. We try to differentiate ourselves from other shows by challenging ourselves to cover the game, cover the sport differently. We continue to raise our production values, and we try to create something different in this very competitive space. And look, we love baseball podcasts. Some of our favorite creators in the indie baseball podcast are also some of our best friends, and we do our best to support them whenever we can. But we don't see our show as simply a podcast, for as much as there is an audio-only version. We're a web series, a travel show, and we're going to be doing our best to bring you the content on many new platforms, not just YouTube or through podcast apps. Now, much like our approach to independent film, just because you can technically create a movie or a show or a podcast with your phone doesn't mean you should. We wouldn't be doing this if we were doing the same old thing, and we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't have you, listeners, viewers, following our show. So what are we? We're essentially a travel show with a focus on minor league baseball. Now, in the episodes before and after the season actually begins, we'll bring you teams and stories from around the world of affiliated, independent, and collegiate summer league baseball. Our show's strength is the people behind the show. From our creative director, Jessica Judson, also known as the First Lady of minor league baseball, our executive producers, Andy Tomcheson and Scott McIntyre, our producers, Andrew Nelson, and the world-famous Eric the Peanut Guy Mertens, our associate producers, Timothy Judgetts and Jess Canaster, and some of our favorite contributors like Jordan Metcalf, Paul Caputo, Emily Nyman, and Gary C. Warren. The talent alone making this show is worth your time. Now, once the first pitch is tossed, we'll hit the road. And this year, we're going all over North America, from Alaska to Cancun, bringing you the greatest game ever invented, viewed in a slightly different way. Some highlights include our 5th birthday party in Omaha, Nebraska with the Storm Chasers, to finally getting out to the Erie Seawolves. We've basically been online dating with them for so long that I'm actually a little nervous, but it should be fun. We can't wait. For the 19 episodes that involve a team visit, we're going to bring you a thoughtful, well-produced, positive baseball experience, shining a light on all aspects of the game. So sit back and enjoy the ride. We have a terrific season ahead of you, and that begins with our episode today. We're talking to Dan Simon, creator of some of the most iconic brands in the sport, and then we're going beneath the foam and learning all about that mascot life, so stay with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, please adjust your scorecards. We have a special guest in the lineup.
And we're very excited to welcome to Let's Get To Dan Simon of Studio Simon. Dan, first of all, I'm excited to have you on for two reasons. One, you're recommended by Paul Caputo, who's a mutual friend. And anytime good people recommend good people, I think good things happen. And I am just an obsessed fan of minor league baseball, and so many of your designs are some of my favorites. So excuse me while I gush, and thank you for being on the show.
Well, gush away. Thank you very much for that. All of those very kind words. And I'm excited to be on your podcast with you. So, well, your podcast and YouTube, right? So
yeah, we're a web series and we're going to be on Amazon soon, but all that's still getting kind of put together. But yeah, we are a little bit all over the place in a good way, although I'm sometimes all over the place in a bad way too. Let's dive into it then. How do you become a kid who, I'm assuming you liked art growing up and you thought to yourself, I want to get into graphic design, I want to get into branding, and how do you make that jump?
Now, when you say graphic design and branding, are you yet asking about sports branding, or are you just asking
just in general? Just how did you decide like you wanted to go down that path in the first place?
It was because of Thurman Munson.
Okay.
I know that then leads to some silence, because it's like, how could that possibly
right? How could that possibly
how can he be responsible for this? But unfortunately, well, here's the story, and I'll try to give the elevator pitch version of it because it's a little longer than this. I was how old would I have been? 17 years old, and this would have been August of 1979. So if anyone wants to do the math, you know how old I am. And I was, for your viewers who may not know who Thurman Munson was one of the best catchers in the game from 1970 until 1979. He unfortunately died in a plane crash of a small prop plane he was piloting.
Oh.
And that happened in the summer of the 79 season. And I was sitting at, I was in our family room at my house in Wayne, New Jersey. And Thurman had just died, and I had cut out pictures and headlines and things like that from the newspaper, the New York Times, the New York Post, the Daily News. My dad would bring home we lived in New Jersey. He worked in New York. He'd bring home those papers. We got the New York Times delivered, and I had a piece of poster board in front of me, and I was arranging all of these things. I was making a poster memorializing our beloved Yankee catcher and captain who had just died in this plane crash. And while I was doing this, I was talking with my mom, and I was a senior in actually, I had just graduated from high school, and I knew I was going to college, but I had no idea of what I wanted to be. And I was talking to my mom about the fact that I don't know what I want to do. And she asked me a question that, frankly, no one had ever asked me before. Or okay. Nobody who could potentially guide me somewhere had ever asked me. She said, "What do you like to do?" And I thought about that for a second. I looked down at what I was doing, and I said, "I like doing this." And she said, "Well, that's graphic design." Now, I'd heard of graphic design, but I never really thought about it, really didn't know exactly what it was. But I guess, well, my mom was a little more cultured than I was. She liked to go to museums. She liked to go to the opera and the ballet. She liked to go to museums. She understood what art was. She also was an editor for a magazine. So I guess she understood moving things around on a page. And that's one of the disciplines of graphic design. So that's when I first was made aware of this as something that was a potential job for me. I did not immediately go to school for graphic design. I had already decided I was going to Rutgers, which is the state school of New Jersey, the only state school that's not named after the state. Little trivia there for you.
That actually is interesting. I did not know that. All
Yeah,
right.
and I once got that question in playing Trivial Pursuit. And
Wow. Yeah.
I knew it right away. But anyway, I went to school. I went there, and after a year and a half of going there, I didn't feel like it was leading me towards some end. And speaking of my mom again, so this is after a year and a half, I'm home for Christmas break, and I'm sitting in the kitchen, and I just said to her, I hadn't really thought this out, but I said, I'm not going back. And she said, that's okay. You don't need to go back, but you have to do something. I had not thought that far. So,
and I had a similar situation. I ended up in the Army. I'm glad you ended up doing this. So there you go.
Yeah, two different outcomes to this little conundrum of what to now do. And I had to think fast. And so I said, you know what? I'll go to art school. And I applied to the School of Visual Arts in New York City. I went there, and that was the beginning of my design career. So kind of, I said it was the elevator pitch, a little bit of a longer answer, but it was not well thought out. It just all happened. And thank goodness my mother was there to prompt me.
My other business, Dan, is independent film. It's actually where I make the majority of my money. And so I appreciate a good elevator pitch, whether it's really an elevator or not. One of the reasons why I think one of the reasons you're on the show, and I think you're a really big part of, I think, changing my life indirectly, because I'm born and raised in Houston, Texas, an Astros fan. I kind of knew minor league baseball was a thing. And then I discovered it in part because I feel like we're in the middle of a revolution when it comes to team branding and team identities. So just how did you end up getting involved in that part of the business? I mean, I know you also did Super Bowl stuff, which, you've just done everything. How did you settle, or not settle, but how did you get involved working in minor league baseball?
Well, I was, it was, even though what you just said about us being in the middle of a revolution with regard to minor league baseball branding, this thing started about, let's see, my mom was still alive, so 20 or so years ago. The revolution hadn't quite started, but the seeds were planted for it. I got this catalog delivered to me called Starstruck. I don't think it's something that's around anymore, because I don't think catalogs are as big of a thing as they were in those pre-internet days, because now the internet is the catalog,
right?
Everything. So, and in this catalog, they had minor league baseball caps, and I remember two in particular: the Billings Mustangs and the Madison Muskies. And they had quirky logos on them, nothing like the logos you see in Major League Baseball. And I remember thinking, hey, this is fun. I want to be part of this fun. And through a whole nother story, which I'd be happy to tell you about, but it's again, well, let's tell this story.
Go for it. This is your time.
My parents were at a wedding, and a wedding reception, and my dad was sitting next to a gentleman who you're sitting next to somebody you don't know, you strike up a conversation. Turned out this gentleman owned a minor league baseball team. And my dad's, and somehow the conversation conversation got to the point where this gentleman, whose name was and still is Marvin Goldklang, said, we just signed an affiliation. They were an independent minor league baseball team, not in an independent league. Back then, some teams, minor league teams in the affiliated minor leagues were independent teams and had a stock their own players. They didn't get them
The
from
Mavericks in Portland famously were part of the
that's the most famous example of such a team. So you understand that clearly, and so just for your viewers and listeners who don't really understand that, today we have independent minor league baseball where you don't have a major league parent club, so you've got to find your own players.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have affiliated minor league baseball clubs where your roster is stocked by the major league team who drafts these high school and college players. And but back then there were several minor league teams playing in affiliated leagues who were independent teams. The Marvin Goldklang's team at the time, had they moved yet? Yes, they had. They used to be they were originally the Miami Miracle, then they became the Fort Myers Miracle. And they had just signed an affiliation agreement with the Minnesota Twins. And he mentioned this to my dad about how they wanted a new identity that was that felt like they were a minor league club. They wanted to look and feel like the Minnesota Twins, or at least have enough similarities that people could see that they were Minnesota Twins affiliate. And my dad said, well, my son's looking to get into sports design. Is it okay if he gives you a call? Marvin said, sure. And that was my first minor league, my first sports branding project, period. And that was 30 years ago.
Wow.
30 years ago. Yep. And here I am still doing it and still doing minor league baseball. Now, as you mentioned, I've done Super Bowl logos. I've done work. I've done hockey teams. I've done collegiate athletic program branding. I've done horse racing and cycling and on and on and on. I've done projects for virtually every sport on the sports landscape, but the majority of my work has always been in minor league baseball. And one of the big reasons is because it's fun and I love it. I love all sports branding, but minor league baseball just has this element of fun that really you don't find. There are other minor league sports, but the minor league baseball branding is the most fun of it.
I totally agree. And I think you make it fun. And one of the big things that I noticed about your designs, I like that I can't necessarily tell it's a you design. Like you do a really good job, I think, of creating a brand and a look that is very specific to whatever the community you're working for. It doesn't look templated or sort of reused like, you can see in other situations. So my question is, how do you start? How do you go when Savannah brings you in and says, we want to get crazy with it, but not too crazy? How do you start from that process of understanding the community and the team that you're serving?
Well, to a large degree, that comes from the team. I've been doing this for a while now, and I've learned to ask the right questions and do even more listening. And the first thing I want to know from the team is, what are they trying to achieve? And and now that's a very broad question, but I ask a lot of more focused questions to get the answer to that question, to that larger question. And what I mean is, you actually just mentioned with the Kannapolis Cannonballers, they want to get crazy, but not too crazy. So some of the questions I asked them led to that, because there were some teams that just want to go, they want something as out there as possible. An example of a team Studio Simon did that falls into that category is the Burlington Sock Puppets. That was a team in the Burlington Royals, or what they had been in the Appalachian League. And, they had always had their parent club's name because all the Appalachian League teams were owned by their parent clubs. So as opposed to most minor league teams, which are owned by individual owners and operators. And they'd kind of been saddled with straightforward traditional names. The Burlington Royals, prior to that, they were the Burlington Indians. And I believe there was even another affiliation somewhere along the road. And now all of a sudden the shackles were off and they wanted to have fun. It's something they really couldn't have, what weren't able to do before. They might have had fun with their, between innings promotions and other things like
Right.
that, but not with their branding. And so they wanted to go nuts. And so we got the Burlington sock puppets were born. Now that wasn't just a goofy name to have for the purpose of goofiness. Burlington, like many cities in the South, had a textile mill, and the main product that was made at their particular textile mill were socks, hosiery, and they were known as the hosiery capital of the South. And so that's where the socks come from, the theme of socks, but we made it a little more fun by naming them the sock puppets. With the Cannonballers, the owner of that team, Andy Sandler, was a former baseball player himself. I don't think he played professionally, but he definitely played at least through college. And as a man of a certain age, he's, if not a complete traditionalist, he at least leans a little more in that direction. So they wanted a fun identity, but they didn't want anything too crazy. So with all the questions that I ask teams, I get an idea of what their vision is for their team, what they're looking to achieve. And I then give them a brand identity that gives them the tools to achieve what their stated goals are. And I might even get so specific as to ask them, do you want, if it's a character driven identity, do you want the character to be cute? Do you want the character to be tough? Do you want the character to be a wise guy? And I'll ask enough questions that even if they don't give me a specific answer, like, yeah, I want him to have gritted teeth, I'm not expecting them to tell me literally, here's how we want every facial feature to look, and here's the exact pose we want the character to be in. But I'm good enough at reading between the lines, and if they might not actually be saying it, but they say enough things that I now have a picture of what they are looking for. And 9 times out of 10, maybe even more like 19 times out of 20, when I do the first round presentation to them, nothing's a surprise to them because I've already asked those questions and heard those answers. And so what they see, even though they were not able to imagine it in their mind's eye, what they see feels like to them that that's exactly what they were looking for.
How do you handle if you have a client that's maybe not getting it? Like you've got it laid out and everything seems like it's working and they just aren't maybe understanding what you're going for, or has it happened?
Well, first of all, yes, it has happened. Those instances, fortunately, have been few and far between. But you just said maybe they're not getting what I'm going for. Well, that's never the problem.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is me not getting what they're going for, because it's, there are other designers out there who are doing sports branding who might have an approach that's more about, okay, here's what we do, and we're going to deliver what we do for you. And not that you better like it, but more so that maybe those people are coming to them because they've seen what they have done, and they might have a particular style and they like that style, and they want what that designer or design firm is going to give them. In my case, even though there might be a common thread between the artwork that I do from one identity to the other, I'd like to think that common thread is the quality of the artwork rather than the exact look and feel, like all my stuff looks the same, because it doesn't, and it intentionally doesn't.
Right.
So,
And I think that's the strength of it for sure.
right. I won't name the client, but I had an instance. This is about about 5 years ago, where I was having the discussions like I have with every team, with the team president and the team GM. And I immediately got the sense that the team GM didn't want to have that conversation. I couldn't understand it at first, because it's like, I'm trying to find out all about you, all about your team, all about your community, all about your fans. And every other client I talk to, they love talking about that, because it's what they do. It's what they're passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
You're not working in minor league baseball unless you're passionate about minor league baseball. You're not getting rich doing it. Team owners might be, because there's value in the franchises, but the salaries for minor league baseball front office staff nobody's getting rich. Hopefully some of them are making decent livings, but they're certainly not laughing all the way to the bank. And so I'm talking with this guy, and he actually just wanted to get off the call, and I couldn't understand it. And what it turned out was, nobody there in the front office, I shouldn't say nobody was on the same page, but there were different factions that were not on the same page, and nobody knew what they wanted. And we went through a number of rounds, and they never saw what they wanted to see. Now, by the way, there is a clause in my work agreements with teams that says you get, and I don't want to pull back the curtain too far, so I won't give the actual number.
Sure, absolutely.
A certain number of rounds of revisions. It's certainly not endless, because if it's endless, they're going to keep asking for change after change, because it's not costing them anything. And we got to the point where we had already exceeded that. But I try not to invoke that clause, because you never want to be I hope this isn't a major curse word. I don't want to be a hard ass. Okay.
No, you are allowed to do what you need to do.
Okay. I just didn't know if you need to bleep these things out or whatever. And it's not that it was that bad of a word, but anyway, you don't want to be that guy. And one reason for that is because you then get a reputation of being hard to work with, and that's not good for business. So I try not to invoke that clause, but we got to the point where we had exceeded it by a couple of rounds. And I finally said to them, I said, I'll keep going, but another clause in those work agreements say, you now need to pay, we have to negotiate an additional fee if you want to keep seeing more and more stuff. And in that case, fortunately, what they did is they pulled the plug on the project. I didn't fire the client. They actually said to me, look, we don't know what we want. And I had showed them so much stuff and so much good stuff. And they just said, I don't think we're ready to actually move forward with anything. And now sometimes you might hear that, and then you see another designer finishes the job for them. That wasn't the case with this. They still have the identity that they were looking to change 5 years ago. So
wow.
That does happen. But again, fortunately, it's a rare occurrence. Again, because most people in the minor league industry are happy to answer all the questions, and I know which ones to ask, and I know how to be a good listener, and it just doesn't happen because I've listened, frankly.
Okay. I have two more questions. One, when you're designing an identity, like, do you have to keep in mind everything, like what it's going to look like on every kind of hat, shirt? You're going to design the mascot. Does all of that have to play into your role or into your process? Or do you come up with sort of the main piece of the design and spin it off from there?
Well, it starts with, in a first round presentation. Now, other designers might do it differently, but at least the way I do it is I will present usually a logo. And by the way, I'll usually present, when I say a logo, I'll present several different directions from which they can choose, but just one logo for each. So if I've got several different directions, several different looks, it's not like I'm doing a primary logo, several cap logos, secondary logos, all the uniforms for each of those different directions, because that's a tremendous amount of work. So I'll do one or two logos for a particular look from which they choose. Once they have chosen a direction, then I flesh out what is frankly a very wide-ranging brand identity. I have the style guides I deliver to the clients are anywhere from 15 to 20 plus pages. So there's a lot that goes into a brand identity. But your point, or to the point of your question, where you talk about a mascot and you talk about multiple logos, those different directions that I'm presenting, even though they're not yet fully fleshed out, they are directions that I know are flesh outable, if that's not actually a phrase. I'm not going to design myself into a corner where I'll present something and then they choose a particular direction. And then I think, oh, wow, I have no idea what else I'm going to do with this. I know what I'm going to do with each of those directions. It's got to have legs, in other words. And so I'm presenting them something that I know I'm going to be able to flesh out.
Last question. Like I told you before, I'm in the film business as well. The cutting room floor is the famous place where things go that maybe don't get seen. Are there how many designs do you have out there that you loved that maybe just didn't get picked up by the team?
Yeah, I love that you asked that question, because what could have been. I have had some things that it's a real shame did not ever see the light of day. Now, I'd like to believe that when I present something to a client, when I present them multiple directions for their consideration, each one is as good as the next. But the reality is sometimes you just do something that's just better, because think about how many great Tom Hanks movies there have been, but some of them haven't been so great. So even the best in the business has things that are better than others. And the particular team I was mentioning, where they decided to kill the project, there's something really good on the cutting room floor. There are actually several things that are really good that ended up never seeing the light of day in that. There's other things that I guess the short answer to your question is there are tons of that. And some of them I keep in my hip pocket, because you never know. Something might come up where I can reuse that. It's actually happened a couple of times. So they do get to live. But here's an example. And talk about Paul Caputo. Paul was doing an episode of the Baseball by Design podcast, on which I was a guest, with the Erie Seawolves. And he brought up something that I did share from the cutting room floor. I don't normally share those, because you never know. Like I said, I might be able to use them again. But when he was doing his story on sportslogos.net about their identity, the story behind the nickname series, I shared with him a direction that was not chosen, that was presented when I was doing the SeaWorld's brand update, which featured a wolf skull with two crossed backs beneath them. And the decision at the time was the team president, who was my client, Greg Coleman, said, I really love this, but it's not. We want something that appeals to all fans. This will appeal to some fans, but it has a more limited audience than something a little more family friendly. And I agreed completely with that. I felt that way even when I developed it, but I just wanted him to see what the possibilities were at that time. Fast forward several years, and Greg came to me. I've continued to do work for them. Matter of fact, I'm currently working on a new project for them that will be on field for the 2024 season. And he wanted to do an alternate identity, and he had this idea about he was thinking of a wolf skeleton, but like the full body of a wolf.
Uh-huh.
And I said, you know what? We've already got something that's sort of in that vein. And I reminded him of the wolf skull direction that I did. And I said, I've got an idea for what we can do with this. And I mocked that up. I made some changes to it. I mocked that up and I showed it to him and he said, bingo. And that's already been unveiled for the 2023 season. And we call it the Howling Dead, where it still has the wolf skull in it. There's a cool new cap that it's featured on, and a new alternate jersey. So that what made it from the cutting room floor to ultimately the field. So that one literally and figuratively rose from the dead.
I love that. That's a great place to stop. But before I do that, though, for every Saving Private Ryan, there's a man with one red shoe, and that's Tom Hanks' career right there. He is Dan Simon. He is one of the guys that's keeping minor league baseball alive. Thank you so much for being on Let's Get To.
James, thank you so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, please adjust your scorecards. We have a special guest in the lineup.
We've seen them all running around the park, taking selfies, playing games between innings, doing impressions of A Star Is Born, doing gymnastics, fighting stormtroopers, pretty much everything and anything, and they're doing it in July, in the heat, in the humidity. Mascots are the front porch of a minor league team, and they are often the first thing you see, the first thing you experience. But who are these people beneath the fur and the foam? On the condition of anonymity, we speak to one about the art of mascotting. Their identity has been hidden for their safety and for the protection and the integrity of the character. This is starting to feel like Dateline, but, baseball style.
And as we continue on this episode of Let's Get To, we're going to go not behind the curtain, but maybe behind the foam and the fake hair. We're going to talk to a mascot. Now, to keep the illusion, we are not going to reveal who this mascot is or what team they're for. All we will say is that they are from one of the 140-ish, I guess, affiliated minor league teams. So, how are you doing this evening?
Doing well.
Did you like the nefarious sort of under the cloak and dagger approach we're taking to the episode?
Yes, it is perfect. I'm all here for it.
So minor league baseball mascots in particular are incredibly important. They are in many ways for kids, especially the first interaction with a minor league team. At what point did you decide that's a thing you wanted to do?
Oh man, so it's going to be hard to reveal my origins with mascotting because I think if I do, a lot of people are going to automatically know. I'm connected in the mascot community more ways than one.
Okay.
But basically, I went to an event in my state, got to see how actual real sports mascots are compared to, the corporate guys like Chuck E. Cheese. These guys are doing flips and they're athletic and they're incredibly comedic. So that kind of inspired me for many years before I got this opportunity. I've been a few minor league baseball mascots in my state. So it's just been watching them on YouTube for too many hours for too many years and just getting inspired, basically.
When you were a kid, was there any moment that you were like at a ball game and you thought, "Oh, that's really cool"? Is that kind of how it started for you?
Basically, yeah, like the main event I first went to that had a bunch of mascots there. That's what basically got me into it, and then just going to games afterwards, going to games out of state. YouTube, of course, has been my biggest learning
Yeah.
tool for all this.
Well, I'm wearing my Astros sweatshirt. I'm a big Orbit fan. I think he's one of the best to do it. Who on the major league level do you think, from a mascot perspective, is doing it right?
Oh man, there's a lot out there. I mean, Benny the Bull is so clearly obvious just because he has this personality that sets him apart very well. Uh, Let me think who else. Stuff the Magic Dragon in Orlando. He's one of the best as well with all these crazy stunts he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I admire him mainly because of the fact that he's doing a lot of original stuff you don't see others do. Like he'll do a ladder flip like someone else has done, but he'll do other things with it. That's kind of what I prefer to do with my own work. I like taking stuff but adding something new onto it. It's just like it's just so cool that it sticks out to our group of performers, but also sticks out to the public as well, and maybe the few that have seen mascot stuff online, just so it's not you did a ladder flip. That's what this mascot did, but no, you're doing something different. So
Yeah.
it's cool to stick out that way. I
No, I love
appreciate it a
that.
lot.
And I was thinking about it too. Like, the rumor has it is that the guy who plays Orbit is a trained clown. Like, it seems like this is the kind of thing you can come at from a bunch of different ways and be successful.
For sure. I mean, a lot of people have marketing degrees, acting degrees. I have an advertising one. Well, there's many other majors too. I've seen a lot of theater. Sometimes these guys don't have a degree and they get in anyway. It is a lot of business and marketing involved, especially in like the pro leagues, like full-time office hours and everything.
Yeah.
So besides performing, it is a lot of business, which is very cool to know. It's nice that it's more things than just funny guy in suit. There's a whole business practice to it.
Yeah, no, exactly. Funny guy in suit. That's I think unfortunately what most people think. It's
Mhm.
interesting. We're going through great lengths to not hide your identity. How important is it to be that immersive to make sure that the mascot is the mascot and the person is the person and never the two shall meet?
I mean, I think it varies per performer. You have people who are the most secretive mascots ever, who don't want to be revealed by anybody. They deny all friend requests or LinkedIn requests and stuff like that, even the people in the community. And then you have the performers who, like Casey Wolf, he does school shows where he takes off his head and his costume and he shares his story. So everyone knows who he is, and it doesn't bother them. Like for me, I like being secret just to fully put myself out there. Uh, it always is awkward having people who know who I am, and I'm just like, is this gonna be weird for them? I guess like there's that as well. Like I'm kind of in the middle. I'm good with some people knowing. I'm good with some people not knowing for sure. I think for the character itself, the one I am has kind of built himself up in the past few years, so I like having him as himself mainly.
Yeah, it's almost like how Iron Man, took his helmet off, but maybe Batman doesn't. So there you go.
Exactly. There you go.
Um, I just had this image of like, you being in a serious relationship and it's now the time to tell that person, by the way, this is what I do, and then pulling out the suit. I gotta imagine that would be a pretty hilarious moment. Um, I've seen you in person. I've seen a bunch of mascots in person. The thing that I'm always impressed by is, particularly because it's a baseball show, so it's the middle of the summer. The question everybody wants to know is, how do you keep cool?
So the real reason is we don't. So it's just mostly hydration before and after is the big key. A lot of it just comes down to us being used to it. I'm that type of performer where the heat doesn't really bother me unless it's a giant like 100-degree day where I can feel it. But other than that, if it's just like a normal nighttime game, I can last for hours if needed. But it's mainly my legs getting tired and just breaking for my sanity, especially if I'm about to do like a dance skit or something big. I take breaks just to help. But there's been many times where I'm at an appearance that has like, like we used to have all-star games in this league or bigger appearances at other leagues games, and there's like 5,000 people compared to the typical 1,000 I'll perform to. And that alone gives me this energy and adrenaline, and like I'll just be out there for hours. I'll try to see as many people as I can because it's like this is what I like doing. I want to see everyone. I want to show everyone what this character can do. And I mean, that's been a big thing for building up this character as well. These outside appearances at other games that kind of give him his own mini fandom, if you will.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a matter of if you're used to the heat or not. Like I know some people have, for parades mostly, they'll do those camelback like ice pouches that can get heavy and it can also melt. So I don't really do that. A lot of people have fans in their heads, which the pros will admit that it's not worth it. Usually they're already broken, or they just blow
Oh,
hot
yeah.
air, or there's been horror stories of female performers getting their hair stuck in the fans. So I don't like it when they put fans in. It doesn't do anything. You just have to get used to it, or at least a suit that has decent ventilation holes or breathability, basically.
That's terrifying.
Yeah,
There's a horror comedy in there somewhere. If I put my filmmaker hat back on, but
I can see that.
that's terrifying. What is, I know we don't have much time left, but you know, what is for you the best moments for you? Is it meeting a little kid? Is it doing a stunt and having the audience react? Where do you feel like this is the best part of my gig?
Man, like there's just so many of it, like there, especially because some of these teams in this league, like mine, are decently small. So there are some days where it gets stressful. I want to do more, and there's some limitations. But as soon as I put the suit on, I'm like, I love this. This is what I like doing in my life. I mean, yeah, there's definitely moments like with kids, we're just interacting with a group of people, or especially the moments of you are with like a bunch of college kids and you don't know how they're going to react. But once you show that you're very relatable with the humor you have, you win everyone over. Like that's a good feeling. Crowd work is a big one. Like it's such a weird thing to say and think about, but if I can feel like I'm Benny the Bull for a few minutes in suit, just having like everyone react to what you do, it's the best feeling. It's just really nice being able to do stuff for all these people, especially with skits. Like many skits for other mascots will work depending on their audience or the theme night. Like, we have Silver Sluggers for different teams, like older fans. You have family days, you have Thirsty Thursdays with a bunch of older kids. So, the right skits at the right time always hit different for sure. But those skits that actually have giant reactions is like, you get that feeling inside for sure. So it's many things. There's many different things that give me the moment and feeling of this is why I do what I do. So it's just too many to name at this point.
With this, as I've been doing the show, getting a selfie with the mascot has always been a big part of it for me. And I was thinking about this when I was getting a mask with a picture with, we'll rule out a team that you're not, in Frisco, Texas, with the Rough Rider. And I was thinking about it because it was 115 degrees. And I thought to myself, Slugger the Sea Dog can do all that stuff because it's only 70 degrees when he's in the basement. I mean, like he's kind of got
Is it?
right?
I didn't even know what the temperature was up there. So dang, 70 would be nice, honestly.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, anybody can redo the song from A Star Is Born if it's 70 degrees out there. So is there some pecking order of like you have it easier than others, or do you guys give each other the business a little bit about that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about this community is that everyone's very welcoming and open. Like, there are mascot group chats that are very private, just so you can share ideas and notes. I mean, for me especially, I love doing personal calls with performers in my league or in the big leagues, just because it's cool to throw stories back and forth and just to learn about each other. So it's very friendly. There's never been like direct competition of like, oh, you have better resources, so you suck, or you're doing this and whatever. Like it's just we're all doing the same thing. A lot of us have better resources than other. Unfortunately, I'm kind of in the middle ground.
Right.
But I think it's just doing what you do with enough passion. I think that can get you somewhere. So it's just very friendly between everyone. It's cool learning about. Just like now, I didn't know it was 70 degrees in Maine during the summer. Gosh. I wish
I'm assuming it's 70 degrees in Maine. I'm assuming that. All right. Well, that does. Yeah, exactly. That does wrap up our time. And I just want to thank you again for not only, being on our show and all this stuff, but also what you're going to do for minor league baseball, because I think the mascots, particularly in minor league baseball, are on we used to call it the military, the tip of the sword, but y'all are the tip of the sword for keeping this game growing. So thank you for that.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, we love doing what we do. So it's good to have people like what we do in return, basically.
And And now, on to close it out, the right-hander from Houston, Texas, James Christopher.
So that does wrap up episode 1 of our 5th season. We've got some fun in store for the rest of the year. In the first few weeks, we'll be visiting the Rocket City Trash Pandas. We're going to be out to Corpus Christi for Blue Ghost Weekend. And again, our 5th birthday party at a suite in Omaha, Nebraska. So if you're out there, come by, check us out. And in the coming weeks, we've got some fun interviews with the Columbia Fireflies, the Daytona Tortugas, and an amazing interview with Texas Longhorn national champion and American League champion Calvin Schiraldi about his new book, The Arena. Again, a packed season, new friends, old friends, new parks, new states, so much going on this year. And so, as we get ready for the season, remember some friendly advice. Candlesticks always make a nice gift. Maybe you could always find out where she's registered, and let's get to. Let's Get To is presented by Twitchy Dolphin Media. Creative directors Jessica Bybee-Jedgetts. Executive producers James Christopher, Andy Tumchesson, and Scott McIntyre. Produced by Andrew Nelson and Eric Mertens. Associate producers Timothy Jedgetts and Jess Canaster. All content created by Let's Get To is the sole property of Twitchy Dolphin Media. All content created by teams covered in the episode are the sole property of the trademark holders.